Well, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depending on where you are, and a very warm welcome to this 80/20 Centre sponsored event on webinar Cashflow Lifestyle, how to stimulate hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in less than 2 days a month using webinars. It's actually been quite a long time in the making, this one. I haven't never presented on the subject before. I've had a number of clients want more and more information about how I run webinars, since it's the primary source of my revenue. And so I decided, for the sake of my clients, I may as well put something together. If I'm going to do it for them, I thought I might give you a little bit of an insight yourself. So, as I said, a very warm welcome. We've got a lot of people registered for the event. It's proving to be a very popular subject. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tom Poland, and I'm joined, as always, actually he's not in the office right now, but he's normally here, sitting at my feet, Monty the Marketing Wonder Dog. We live in a little place called Castaway Beach on the normally very sunny sunshine coast of Queensland, Australia. And I am aware we've got representatives almost from the whole of the United Nations here today. So for those of you who don't know, we're sort of up in the northern part of the east coast of Australia, down under. We do run a hype-free zone here at the 80/20 Centre, so that what you receive in terms of information, strategies, tips or ideas, you can be very confident it will work in the real world. It has been working in the real world. We don't exaggerate our claims. They won't find any BS floating around. We just give you the real oil, the stuff that actually works. Now, whoops, flick through that slide a bit fast. On your screen somewhere, if it's not already open, we want you to find this expand collapse menu, and we're just going to give this a test run. So have a look for that dark orange rectangle with a white arrow. If you click on that, if it's not already open, then the little window will pop open and you can type a question. And now we've got people registered, as I said, from all over the world. Hello to Mohammed in Port Said in Egypt, Frederica in Milan, Italy, Anil from India, Ahmad from Indonesia, Jordan from Nigeria, Elmi, sorry, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but from the Philippines. Hello to Neil in the UK, James from California, US of A, Elton, your countryman, is there in Detroit, Michigan, Dan, Edmonton, Canada, Peter from South Africa, Sue from Scotland, Wayne from England, and all of us, Tom, Dick and Harry's and Sue's from right around Australia and New Zealand. So great. It's good to see you on board. Sydney is in Sydney. I think I've got that right. Sydney, how about that? It lives in Sydney. How appropriate. Hey, very warm welcome, Adam, as well, down there at Nambucca Heads, I think. Let's just see if you guys got the hang of how to ask questions. What I'm going to ask you to do is going to ask you to write in the city that you're in and what the weather is like. So if it was here, I'd be writing in Castaways Beach and sunny, as usual. So we're just the name of the city. I want to make sure that you know how to write a question in. So give us the weather forecast. Minerals in Brisbane, it's fabulous. Auckland's got some rain. Brendan, what a surprise. Kapiti Coast, Rebecca's down on the beautiful Kapiti Coast in the southern part on, I think, the western side of the North Island, if you got that. Brisbane, someone else in Brisbane's got cloudy. Brisbane's sunny and cloudy, and it's cool and it's warm. There's lots of different people in Brisbane have different opinions. Lower Hutt, Galen says it's rainy and horrid. Auckland's overcast, Melbourne's overcast. Alright, Lower Hutt, grey and windy, cold in Dunedin. Oh, Simon, I felt for the Highlanders just losing that game on the weekend. Will, all the way from Galway. Man, Will, you must have strong coffee to be up this late at night. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning or something for you. Well, very warm welcome anyway, especially. Yeah, so as I said, look, let's rock and roll, because I can't say, yeah, 1 a.m. for Will. Okay, well, I'm going to have to make sure I go all out to give you full value if you're prepared to get up for this at 1 a.m. Speaking of that, let's go and have a look at the agenda. I really packed this with some cool stuff, and there's some stuff I'm going to show you that as a professional student of webinars I haven't seen before, because I want, I just honor the fact that you guys are rocked up, you're here, and you're investing your time, and I want to honor that. So we're going to look at how I came about to be using webinars to generate sales, who can benefit from using webinars, and also, quite importantly, who can't, who's not going to benefit from it realistically. If you're going to sell using webinars, there are 7 questions you need to be very, very clear on. Each of the questions is critically important. You have to have answers to these questions very specific answers, nothing general, nothing broad. So we're going to look at those 7 questions, and then I got a kind of a, by the way, here's my sequence for putting webinars together. It's a key to productivity, this by the way. That's also in part 3. We're going to then, I want to give you something so that, a couple of things that are really, really practical, both in terms of getting people to the webinars, but also how to engage them quickly. So this is the how to build rapport and trust fast so that attendees devour your content. We'll look at how do you maximize engagement. And for those of you who might have done 3-dimensional seminars, workshops, etc., you've done keynote speeches perhaps at conferences, how does the webinar need to be different in order to keep people engaged on a webinar versus a seminar? Now, for those of you who might be just starting out and you may not have a list, I want to give you something. Or you might have a list but it's not very big. I want to give you a really, really cool way to grow a list from scratch quite quickly, of people who are interested in your subject. Now, I'm not going to give away the keys to the whole list building vault today. We don't have time, but I will give you an opportunity once we have a look at a program I'm going to be running in September, how you can get the keys to the whole vault. A common question that has come up is, what are the best times to run webinars? What are the best days and times? And Rod Craig, I've noticed your question there about prices. We'll get back to that at the Q&A. Now, then I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you a little blueprint. So I'm going to, if you like, put the maths together in part 8, because it's easy for someone to say, oh, look, you know, we make hundreds of thousands of dollars with this thing. Well, how? Well, what's the maths behind it? How does it add up? So I want to give you that. When I say blueprint, I don't know if it's not really a blueprint. It's more of a simple analysis of how it works, so how I managed to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash flow in less than 2 days a month sitting next to the beach. Which, look guys, I still pinch myself. We'll talk more about it later, but this whole, for me it's about lifestyle. For some of you it'll be about revenue, and for others it might be about both. But to me, webinars give me a lifestyle that I could only have dreamed of 10 years ago. Okay, now all of this cool stuff, and we know we've all done it, we've all been to seminars or webinars and got some cool stuff and come away with a bunch of notes and action items, and then we got busy with emails and meetings, and month after month ticks by and nothing's actually done with it. So how do you actually take this stuff and implement it and start generating revenue? I'm going to give you the 5-step formula for that, which is all but infallible. We'll take questions. You can type questions in at any time, as indeed Rod has done, and I will answer them. The group relevant ones I'll answer at the end. And what I mean by that is that if it's a question that's so really, really, really specific just to you, and others aren't going to get a lot of value from me answering that question, then I'm going to probably just be a little rude, sorry, and skip over it. But if I feel it's a group relevant question, enough people are going to get some value out of it, and I'm more than happy to attempt to answer it. Owen's question I can answer straight away. Is the content of these slides available after the webinar? Owen, I am recording it, and if you hang around to the Q&A, remind me and I'll tell you how you can get a copy of the recording. The slides won't be going to everyone, but the video replay will. Okay, and then for those of you who are interested, I'll be introducing my new webinar cash flow and lifestyle program, which starts September the 3rd, but you can hang on for that if you want to, or if you've got what you need after the Q&A, just simply use your click of your mouse button and you can disappear into the digital ether. Cool. Questions at any time, as I said. Let's kick off. Now, prior to the advent of webinars from 1981 to 2006, and that's 25 years, and if you're not counting, I presented more than 1,000 seminars, keynote addresses. There's photos from actual places where I was presenting, workshops, other presentations. Now, 1,000 is a lot, and it was more than that. It involved travel, flying from city to city, mostly driving, but sometimes flying from one province or state to the other, or internationally. Sometimes we hired conference rooms if it was our own in-house gig. Sometimes the conference organizers hired them, but there was the expense of that, and there was the conference rooms, and inevitably whether it was a traffic or a rental car or it was my own car, there was often a little bit of traffic along the way, and of course then there's sometimes parking hassles as well. Now, it's not to say I didn't enjoy doing those presentations, because it really is something that I do enjoy doing. However, it all changed for me. The perspective started to change when we moved to Australia in 2003, and I was still doing the flying, actually more flying than normal and more travelling, but we were living next to the beach in a little place called Alexandra Headland. And this next shot is actually the beach I live next to. It's called Castaways Beach. You can see there that's about as crowded as it gets, really. I mean, at Easter, maybe there's more people on the beach, but most mornings when Monty and I go for our walk, and I have a swim down there pretty much every day of the year, because it's warm enough to do that here. I had a question, and I guess the question was this. I still wanted to make the money because I enjoy the lifestyle that comes with that, but I couldn't figure out how I could cut down on all this travel and all this conference speaking, seminars and everything else without compromising the income. And then down from the sky, Mark's lost sound. Everyone else got sound still? Let me know, will you? Just a couple. Got sound? Yes? Okay, Mark, it's you, sorry. Okay, and then appeared an angel. And hopefully you can see my angel sparkling, because I went to some trouble to make sure it was a sparkling angel. And the angel appeared in the form of GoToWebinar. Now, GoToWebinar launched in 2006. This was the first major international, super reliable platform for webinars. And as soon as I was aware it was there, I jumped in and I ordered the thing. So I've been a GoToWebinar member or client virtually from its inception. As such, therefore, I'm a webinar pioneer. So there's my receipt there, and the date of joining is November the 9th, 2006. Now, I have to tell you, I was nervous about this, because going from one three-dimensional, live, colorful presentation where it's obviously going to be easy to keep people engaged and interested and to have an offer at the end that people might be interested in, to webinars where it was me staring at a screen and you staring at a screen, this was going to be quite a challenge. So with some nervousness, I used the 1,000 seminars that I had been presented and workshops and talks, etc. I've since now done hundreds of webinars. In 2007, which was the first full year running webinars, I managed to generate 6 figures from them. That gave me a lot of confidence, and multiple 6 figures every year since. And the beautiful part about this, folks, is you can do it in less than 2 days per month. I'll give you the formula for that, the blueprint, later on. So whilst a lot of people struggle because they often have the money but not the time, or they have the time but not the money, webinars can afford you a beachside lifestyle. And that probably brings us to what this webinar is all about. It's ultimately, this is about selling at webinars or via webinars. Sometimes you can sell on the webinar, sometimes you sell after the webinar, but the revenue nevertheless is generated from the webinar. So we're not, the context of this therefore is not training or managing via webinars, or you can certainly do that. GoToMeeting is an excellent platform for that. Screen share, video play, feedback, questions, and so on and so on. But that's not what this is about. This is about generating revenue from webinars, okay? Which is a very, very different animal to training or managing. So here's our core message. Now, if you get nothing else from the webinar, I would love you to walk away with a commitment from this slide. Because if you get this, then you're going to be able to make a lot of dreams reality. Is that too much of a hype? No, I don't think it's too much of a hype. I think that's true. Where's my clicky thing gone? Here we go, there's the mouse. Okay, so here's the core message from the webinar. If you want to create an additional revenue stream, if you want to reach faraway markets, if you want to enhance professional fulfillment because you're moving from one-to-one to one-to-many, if you want to enjoy an extraordinary lifestyle, then you can do it regardless of technical fear or phobias, and you must develop webinar capability. To me, it is the most effective way to tick all of those boxes. It's for those of you who do have something of a technology phobia, if you are on this webinar, you've probably got all the expertise you need to run the webinar. Yeah, you need a little bit more, but really, if you can open emails and you can send emails and you can click a link and you can show up on time, the rest of it's just practice, just like driving a car. Okay, get a good instructor, practice, and you'll be fine. So the core message really is divided into 2 areas. One is that webinars are a terrific way to facilitate an enhanced lifestyle, more time and more money. The second one is that webinars are a terrific way to add another revenue stream to your business in addition to whatever you already have. So the webinar is for you if you tick one or both of those boxes. You want to add an additional multiple six-figure revenue stream to your business, or you're like me and you're happy with just having multiple six figures and you enjoy a beachside type lifestyle working from a home office. Okay, so let's get into the presentation itself. Who can benefit from using webinars to sell and who can't, because it's not for everyone. I'm just going to put a whole bunch of industry types up on the screen here and see if you can identify yours. Here we go. Webinars are absolutely perfect for anyone in a service-based business. You're providing advice, consulting of some sort, training, but they're also can be excellent for physical product sales as well. Art, clothing, people who are distributing products nationally, internationally, regionally, franchisees, licensees, anything that's visual in terms of a product, such as art or lingerie, just for sake of examples. There's probably something Freudian there, but don't dwell on it too far. Landscaping, so anything that has a visual appeal and it's a product, particularly a software, terrific. You could argue that's a service or a product, I suppose. So any questions about that slide? If you don't see yourself on that screen, pop your industry type into the questions box and I can have a look at that. Okay. Other than that, who webinars do not particularly benefit are those places that rely on a very tactile experience. If a day spa, I think it would be difficult to really. The thing is, you could demonstrate a day spa on a webinar, but getting people to attend a webinar about a day spa, that would be difficult. Supermarkets, I mean, who's going to go to a webinar on, hey, look at our supermarket? Hotels, motels, horticulture, agriculture, massage, other tactile services, property development, arguable. I haven't helped any clients with webinars on property development. Maybe it's possible, but I still think it's a very tactile experience where people want to go and physically see and feel the area. Restaurateurs, I think, would struggle with webinars, retailers. Okay, any questions about that? Solicitors, definitely. Now, the thing with accountancy and solicitors is you really got to niche the subject. Consultants or teachers, yep, they were on the previous slide. So let's go back to that previous slide. There you go. So you can see, yeah, I didn't have it on there for long, but you can see teachers on the right-hand side there. I thought I put solicitors on here under legal or something like that. Maybe I missed it. Yeah, look, a colleague of mine, Warren Black, is both a qualified lawyer and an accountant. He uses webinars very, very effectively, but you've got to niche the subject. So it's no good just saying, hey, we can take all your legal needs, come along to the webinar. You've got to give exceptional value on a specific subject, perhaps whether it's asset protection, via trust, or whatever the subject might be. Abstract stuff like economic analysis. Michael, that's a really, really good question. The simple answer is yes, but again, you've got to niche the subject and you've got to make sure there's a need for it. You've got to find the people that have the need. Now, there is a need for it, economic analysis, of course. So the trick then is you've got to find the audience. You've got to find out where these people hang out, but more on that in a upcoming slide. Angela, I'm not sure about investment properties. I think if I'll tell you how you'd use it, Angela, for investment properties. You would want to have, I believe you'd want to have a range of investment opportunities. Perhaps it's a block of apartments, but there's multiple price points in the block of apartments. And if you have overseas buyers, people from Asia, for example, perhaps North America, less likely, UK investors, it would be a terrific way. Anyone who isn't just in the same town or city as you, that can't just drive in, it would be it would be a terrific, great way to introduce them before they hopped on the plane. They look at the opportunities online. You get some terrific 360-degree videos you can run on a webinar now. So it's like you're standing in the middle of a room and your head spinning right around. You can see the views and everything else. So as a pre-sale, it would work very well. What else have we got? Health product sales, most definitely. Consultant teachers, yes. Abstract stuff, yes. Freelance copywriter. Evan, just halfway through my copywriting course. Are you thinking of taking that up, Evan? Yes, but indeed, yes, I've sold copywriting off webinars before. Okay, so let's get on. This is kind of a bit preliminary. I want to get into the real meat of it. So here we go. Okay, so questions to answer in order to sell using webinars. I just keep an eye on the time here. I do have a watch. I've forgotten that. So just looking at the screen. Okay, so let's get to this sort of part of the meaty part of this. Whoops, go back, Tom. First thing is to identify a specific unmet need. I call it the SUN, so specific unmet need. Now, note the word specific, please. The more you niche down on the subject, then the more attracted the people with that need will be to attend. And I used a very general example before with a webinar on, a full services legal firm versus a webinar on asset protection through trust. So that's a really good example of niching down to a specific unmet need. Now, less people will have a specific unmet need, but the people that do have that specific unmet need will be extremely interested in it. So where is there a specific unmet need? If I use this webinar as an example, then making money one-to-many via webinars would be a specific unmet need. It's not webinars generally, it's not marketing generally, it's very specifically how do I generate revenue through webinars. So very, very specific. Who owns the need? Okay, well, that's what I call an ICP, or an ideal client profile. So we want to create an avatar of this person and what their needs are. In my case, pretty much anyone offering a service-based or consultancy advice, professional advisors, and certain manufacturers, etc., would be interested, and also those who are wanting a better lifestyle. So coaches, consultants, trainers, etc., who want another revenue stream, professional advisors, or want a better lifestyle, or both. They own the need. What specific product or service features will I create to fill that specific need? Now this is special product service. Now this is really, really, really important. You've got to be creative enough to come up with some features that are special, that people look at and go, wow, I haven't seen that one before. This ties in with question number 4. How will I make my product or service unique? Now this is what I call the island versus the continent. If you're, let's say you're a business coach, or you're a trainer, or you're a consultant, and you're basically saying the same as everyone else, leadership development, or team development, or cultural change, or whatever, all those generic, excellent subjects, but very generic subjects, versus, well, that's what I call sitting on the continent. You're sounding the same as everyone else. You may as well be in the middle of Europe with your hand up, with millions of other people got their hand up, because you all appear to be the same from the outside perspective, at least. Whereas an island, if you want to, for example, again, if you want to actually build a webinar, if you want someone who knows what they're doing to hold your hand step by step and build a webinar that generates money, there's only one place I'm aware of that you can come to, and that's me. So that's my island. That's my island. Now you can go other places and learn how to run webinars. You can go to other places and learn how to run webinars that generate revenue. I mean, I've done the courses myself in the early days, so they're there. But I'm the only guy that'll take your hand and walk you through the whole process step by step. So at the end of it, you will actually have developed your own webinar. Now I'm making this point for 2 reasons. One, to illustrate the point that you need to come up with something that is so unique that you are the only place that people can get that from. Now there's lots of different ways you can do this. Anything proprietary, you can trademark things, you can have your little registered mark on there. There are lots of different ways you can cut this. If you want the Colonel's, how many is it, 12 secret herbs and spices, whatever, this is only one place you can get that. That's KFC. If you want Coke, they keep the ingredients, I don't know why you'd want it, but some people do. If you want a Coca-Cola, there's only one place you can get Coca-Cola. Nothing tastes the same as Coca-Cola. They've got an island. So you see these big companies are doing this stuff amongst fierce competition. They are doing it. They are being successful, and there's plenty of small businesses doing it as well. So these questions, by the way, the answers to these questions can take you weeks and weeks and weeks. You must not rush it. The reason most people don't answer these questions is that it's a very creative process. And in business, we tend to be very logical, very rational. We tend to extrapolate from the past. So we tend to build on what we know from the past. And this requires a more creative approach. We have to metaphorically speaking, get our minds into the mind of the client. What are they thinking about? What do they hate doing? What do they hate happening? What would they really love if they could get it? What do they kind of like but they want? So you get the idea. So please, I'm going through the questions fairly quickly, but I would encourage you to take special note of them, because they are, if you miss one of these questions, you will not get the sales that you want, okay? The more you differentiate this thing, then differentiate it in a manner which is desirable, I should hasten to add. The more you can differentiate this in a desirable manner, then the more revenue you generate. Simple. Not easy, but simple. Okay, where does my ideal client hang out? Now, the reason it's important to answer this question is that if you can't get your message to them, it doesn't matter if they have a need and you have the solution. You've got to be able to figure out where they hang out. OPN stands for Other People's Networks. It is my all-time favorite marketing strategy. More on that later. OPN, Other People's Networks. You have OPT, Other People's Time, Other PM for Mary, Other People's Money. OPN is the most powerful of the lot, in my view. Okay, more on that later. So, question 6. What specific benefit-rich title will compel my ideal client to register? One example I could give you off the top of my head is how to stimulate hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in cash flow in less than 2 days a week, a month, using webinars. Now, again, note the word specific, please. This is not how to generate webinars that sell. It's more specific than that. It has specifics in respect to a large number. It has specifics in respect to time, less than 2 days. It has specifics in respect to webinars. So it is specific and benefit-rich title. That's the ideal title. There are other ways to do titles, but to me that's the best way to do it. Then you want to come up with a benefit-rich agenda. The idea of the title is to get people interested in the webinar. Excuse me a second. I just got a knock at the door. Monty wanted to come in. Hello, Monty. All right, so the title is to generate interest. The agenda is to generate a registration. Now, I said I wanted to give you my sequence for high webinar productivity. I kind of put this as an add-in, as a bit of a bonus, because I notice a lot of people making a mistake when it comes to getting into the webinar business. And I was asked, it was last year actually, I was asked by a colleague in Germany, past client, current colleague, how I managed to be have so much productivity. And I thought about it, and I actually wrote about this at the time in a blog post, and I thought, yeah, I suppose I am reasonably, I do pump this stuff out. And I figured the reason was simple. Let's take webinars as an example of this principle. So what I do is I write the title of the webinar, and then I create the agenda. And that's the hardest part of the whole thing, because I put a great deal of thought into it to make sure it's clear and it's compelling and so on. Okay, so I write the title, create the agenda. Then I write and send out the email invitations. I send them out to my list, to other people's networks, Facebook advertisements, etc. I don't physically do any of that, but I do write them. I do the copywriting, I do myself. Now, once we've started the marketing, then I write the webinar. So the date has been set, the invitations have gone out, people are registering, it's probably only 2 weeks out, and that's how I get these things done. And the thing is that most people think, well, okay, let me write a webinar, and once I'm happy with it, I'll start promoting it. And that can drift on for month after month after month. So far better to say, okay, I do this with my clients who are interested in webinars. When are we going to run the webinar? Okay, set the date, set the time. What's the title going to be? What's the agenda going to be? Okay, let's start doing some marketing, and they're committed. Okay. You've just invoked the 5-step implementation acceleration formula of time, date, place, person, money. You've got it on the line. Now, whether it's a conference talk or webinar or it's a book or whatever else, that is a fantastic formula to get things done. So then we conduct the webinar, promote the offer, and record it. We then publish and re-promote to generate extra revenue. More on that a little later on. Any questions about that, please just pop them in. As I said, I'll answer everything at the Q&A. Now, this was another question that comes through quite a lot. How do you get people trusting you and respecting the quality of what you're about to say as soon as possible on the webinar? Well, oops, I just went back. Sorry, let's go forward. That's better. Now, it's easy if you've written a bestseller, or you've appeared on, a talk show like Larry King Live, or you've got one leg, you're blind, and you just climb Mount Everest. Okay, people want to hear from you. These are extraordinary things. Or perhaps you've single-handedly destroyed Al Qaeda, and you've just won the Victoria Cross, or you've saved 25 Siberian hamsters from a fire in a pet shop and lived life and limb. Now, if you've done any of those things, people want to hear your story because it's interesting. But most of us haven't done those things. And so the question is, without having achieved something which is almost supernaturally extraordinary, how do you get rapport? How do you get respect? Now, I want to give you a couple of ways to do this. First of all is the before and after method. Now, we've all seen this from the weight loss places. They show you a picture of what the person looked like before they signed up, and they show the picture of what they looked after. There's lots of different, acne, pimples, etc. before. I used brand X, and after I used brand X, and I wasn't happy before, and now I'm happy. You can see it's always a frown and a smile left or right. Okay, so how do we use that if you're not on weight loss, or you're not in... By the way, some people can use this really, really well if you're into any sort of visual product. You're doing home renovations, if you're an architect, if you're a beautician, anything before and after. You show this is a photo of the house before, this is a photo of the after. But everyone can use it regardless of whether you are the visual a product that can be appreciated visually or not. This is how you do it. This is the step-by-step process, okay? So at the start of the webinar, the first thing is you tell them your story. And I did exactly that with you. So you're getting two lots of value from this webinar. One is what you can take away and use in your own webinars, but the second is it's actually a live demonstration. I'm actually kind of walking the talk and showing you what I did. So, I used to fly around all over the place and have parking hassles, etc., etc., etc. I seem to have the time. I never seemed to have both the time and the money I wanted. I either had the time but not the money, or I had the money but no spare time. Because when I was out there earning the money, I didn't have the time. When I wasn't earning the money, I had the time. You get the idea. So, and then you say, okay, and this is how I felt. So in this case, I felt stressed when I didn't have enough time, and I felt stressed when I had enough time but didn't have enough money, and I was either stressed or semi-depressed most of the time. And then you say, so what I decided, and then you say what you want them to decide. Now this has got to be true, of course, but there is a happy coincidence often in marketing that the truth is actually what you want people to believe. Now if it's not, you don't lie, don't hype, don't BS, just get creative and figure out what you want them to believe that actually is true. And that's the difference between someone who markets with integrity and someone who markets without integrity is not the result, it's a creative thought. That's all it is. To stay within the bounds of integrity and truth, you just need to think a bit more. So in this case, I can say, I decided that I had to find a way to have a lifestyle next to the beach and have the money I wanted and not sacrifice too much time either. I looked around and I decided that webinars were a way I could have it all. True story, and it's also what I would like you to believe. And then you say, and now I enjoy, and you describe what they want to experience. So now I enjoy this multiple six-figure income, I feel relaxed and enjoy life a whole lot more because I live next to the beach and my future feels secure. All true and all relevant to this presentation. So this is a step-by-step formula. Now, really, this should never take more than 3 to 5 minutes. If you're spending 20 minutes on your story, people will get bored, even though you think it might be very interesting. So, now I feel more relaxed, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so then let me show you how I did it. So you haven't climbed Mount Everest blind with one leg, you haven't single-handedly destroyed Al Qaeda, but you've created rapport, which is I trust you and I like you because you've been genuine, you've been honest, and you've described their situation. More importantly, you've described how they feel. It leads nicely into the next technique, which is what I call fly on the wall. Any questions, pop them in, and I will, as I said, address the group relevant ones during the Q&A. Now, just a note on this: when you're doing this, don't do it the way I did it at the start of the webinar with lots of pictures. Don't do it. This is an information feeding you. It's more relevant to have lots of words. So when I say use a lot of images and less words, you need to use the words when you're conveying a step-by-step. Well, I think it's more effective than when you're conveying a step-by-step process, such as I've just done. But when you're telling a story, you're far better to use images. More on that in a moment. So the second method for building rapport fast is what I call the fly on the wall method. It generally takes a little bit longer, but it is very, very effective. Excuse me, I just have a sip of espresso here. So what's the fly on the wall method? Okay, this is how the fly on the wall method works. I must have done, I don't know, I did one particular presentation I probably did over, I don't know, 300 times, I guess. And I always started, someone would introduce me and I'd stand behind the microphone, and the first words out of my mouth were, "You have two problems. And besides these problems, you don't have any other problems." And the first problem is what I call Sophie's choice. Now, it got people's attention very quickly. Bear in mind that someone had read out a bio, which was, sounded like my mother had written it. It was very flattering. So the minds were open to say, okay, this guy, he's shared the stage with some big international stars, so maybe he's got something to say. So the mind is reasonably open. That's the job of the person reading the bio out. It's pre-scripted, obviously. The job is to impress them that you have something to say. If you start with this, you have a problem, you're going to get their attention. And then you go to explain what the problem is in a metaphor or a story. For example, I didn't say to people, your problem is a lack of work-life balance. I didn't start with those words. I gave them a story. In this case, in this particular example, the story is Sophie's Choice. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. So you use the metaphor and you use the story. You can use a simile, you can use an analogy, but you've got to start having visual pictures exploding in their mind. That's the key. You want pictures exploding in their mind, and those pictures are producing emotions. When I told the story of Sophie's Choice, there were people crying. There were people with tears. There were other people trying. And then I did a little switch, and then I had the whole room laughing. Now, if you can do that with your story, and it's not always relevant to a particular subject to have people with tears in their eyes. In this case, it was. I wanted to drive home. The point I was wanting to drive home is that people were sacrificing their health and the quality of their relationships with their children for the sake of money, and it wasn't worth it. So I wanted to disturb them deeply. Okay, you start with this, getting back to the formula, start with this is your problem, this is the damage it does, and you describe what they hate doing and what they hate happening. They hate it when the kids start talking back to them because they haven't spent enough time with them, quality time with them. They hate the idea, and so on and so on and so on. So you describe the problem, the damage it does, how it makes them feel. You name the emotions they want to avoid. And then remember, you don't just describe the problem. You use the story as a metaphor to bring it to life. I mentioned, and then you go on, let me show you how I've helped my clients change. They had the problem, it's kind of a combination of the before and after and fly on the wall. Now, the reason I call it the fly on the wall method is I used to have people come up to me afterwards and say, that was just uncanny. It sounded like you had been a fly on the wall of my home, my kitchen, in my office. You knew what was happening in my lack of work-life balance. You knew the impact it's been having on my health. I had them reaching in the medicine cabinet for their bottle of pills and for their sleeping tablets, and I had them unscrewing the top of a bottle of whiskey. So we really painted the picture, so all these pictures were exploding in the brain. Now, you're never going to relate to everyone in the audience, but 80-20, probably you're going to touch on some things with 80% of them. So the Sophie's Choice story I mentioned, I told the core of the story of Sophie's Choice, where she's in the line at Auschwitz concentration camp, and she has a little girl in her arms, a little boy there, and she realizes what's happening, and she begs this officer to set her free and the children free, and to go to the children's camp because she wasn't Jewish and she could prove it. And bottom line is she's forced to choose one child to go to the gas chambers and one to go to the children's camp. Absolutely awful. But I've used lots of others as well, which are not quite as dramatic. Pinball leadership describes what it's like when you're bouncing around off 100 emails a day and you've got clients that let you down and staff people that don't turn up and product and orders it, and you just feel like you're a pinball in a pinball machine. Roller coaster revenue or roller coaster income is another one. So you see, you put the image on the screen and you talk about it. So the roller coaster revenue represents that when you're on the top of the roller coaster, you've got enough money, but you don't have a lot of time. But then you stop doing your marketing, and then you find yourself at the bottom. And it's just like a roller coaster. When you're going down the roller coaster, it's really scary because you think, holy cow, I don't have any money, don't have money, don't have any money. So that's roller coaster revenue. So you get the idea. So there are some ways to build rapport and trust fast. Essentially what we're doing is we're wanting to demonstrate that we can identify with where the attendee is at. We want to identify where the attendee is at. All right, so maximizing engagement. Let's talk about that, and let's talk about how webinars are different to a seminar. When you're thinking of the difference between a seminar versus a webinar, think television versus theater, or theater versus television. When you go to we went to a live gig here in Noosa, just close to where we are in Noosa, on Friday night, and it was Forbidden Broadway, and there were 4 characters and a pianist, and it was funny, and it was bodacious, and it was colourful, and they're moving, and they're singing, and they're talking, and so on. If you put that onto television, you've got to do it in a completely different way. And it's the same when you go from presenting at a workshop, a seminar, or training to a screen. You've got to compensate for the lack of eye contact, facial expression, body language, and constant movie. You've got a constant movement, rather, because when you're sitting, if someone's sitting in the audience at a webinar or a seminar, they can see other people around them. They can see you at the front, changing facial expressions, and there's body language, and they can see the screen changing if you're doing a PowerPoint or something similar. So with a webinar, just like television, you notice how often the screen changes in television. It's almost every couple of seconds something is changing. So with webinars, you need to have things changing on the screen a lot more than you might if you're doing the same presentation in a seminar. So you use a lot more images and less words. You use stories and metaphors and examples even more than you might in a seminar, although clearly it's very beneficial if you're in a workshop or a seminar as well. You can use questions. You can stop and ask people's questions. You can use polls. Now, I don't use polls because normally I stuff them up. I don't know why, but I end up crashing the whole webinar, so I haven't used them for a while. But you can do a poll, and people can see the poll results in real life flashing up on the screen, which is very engaging. Most of all, have fresh, interesting, and valuable content. It's like, duh, but it's surprising that a lot of people don't. It's not necessarily easy to develop, but it is developable, particularly if you're using plenty of stories and metaphors and examples, case studies, and so on. All right, so just like we're doing here, exactly. Now, what else we got? Okay, now this is for those who have a small list or don't have a list, because if you don't have people to invite to a webinar, then you're going to be relying on things like Facebook ads and banner ads and so on. It's useful doing those things. It's worth doing those things. There are people on this webinar that have come from Facebook ads, but most of them have come from my list of subscribers or other people's list of subscribers. Now the first thing is, when you set the webinar up, you'll see a screen. This is using GoToWebinar, which I prefer. There's lots of different platforms you can use, but to me this is the best of the best of the best. It's not the most sophisticated, and it's certainly not the most expensive, but it gives me the flexibility to do everything I want. Webinar Jam, not a big fan of Webinar Jam, but that's a different webinar about different webinars. So with GoToWebinar, what you're able to do, and some of the other platforms will do it as well, is you're able to ask people a question when they register. Now, when you registered for this, you were asked the question, and I made it a required question. You had to answer it. Would you like to receive regular tips via online videos, etc., etc., etc.? And you could choose yes, it's free, so absolutely, or no thanks. Now we have, just looking at the registration list, I think we had something like 140 people opt in to the list. So every time you run a webinar, you can build your list. By the way, every time you run a webinar and you promote it, you will have people unsubscribing. But what you're really doing is you're swapping those who are not interested with those who are interested, and overall you're still building your list. So don't stress the unsubscribed. It's a process of natural selection, just like Darwin suggested. Second thing you do is, after registration, you can set it up so that when people register, they get taken to a particular web page. In this case, people didn't set it up for this one, but I often will. They'll go to a free marketing plan, or what we call our business owner's marketing brief, where they'll see a screen a bit like this one. Now, initially, this is what you see on the screen as a pop-up window, kind of floats up, so they see the BOM site, which stands for Business Owners Marketing Brief, where we have a lot of quite cool 5-minute videos with some people from around the world that are just exceptional managers and marketers mainly. So we give them a choice to opt in when they register. When they complete the registration, another page pops up and says, hey, this is pretty cool, do you want to opt into this one? So we have 2 bites of the cherry in terms of adding to the list when we run a webinar. That's pretty cool, by the way. But the big one is what I call OPN. OPN is other people's networks. This is the fastest way to build your list. Now, let me just give you 3 relatively recent examples. There's Dr. Ivan Meisner, who's just flashing onto your screen. He's the founder of BNI. It's the world's largest franchise company and has been one of the fastest growing. Next guy will pop on the screen is a fellow called Richard Koch. He wrote a book called The 80-20 Principle, which sold over 1 million copies. Next guy will pop on the screen is a guy called Ari Galper, who is the world's #1 authority on trust-based selling. Ari is a gentleman. He is one of the most ethical, smartest people I have ever had the privilege of meeting and working with. Now, so the question is, how did I get introduced into their networks, into their databases? How was I able to legally and ethically photocopy, as it were, their subscribers, or at least some of them, not all of them? And it's this method I call OPN. I'm not going to give you the keys to this particular vault right now, but if you stick around after Q&A, I'll show you how you can get the keys, so you can, as a complete unknown, be invited in to the networks and the subscribers of international luminaries such as these people. Now, having given you that as a bit of a tease, I don't want to leave you feeling dissatisfied, so I want to give you a proven method that you can start with. It's not OPN in my classic sense, but it's this. Look, what you do is you put a webinar together and you have a panel discussion and you facilitate 4 people who are experts in a specific subject that you want to also be an expert in, and you facilitate a discussion and you ask each of them to send the invitation out to their lists. You set up the registration for the webinar as I've recommended, so people have the option to opt into your list. You give them something really cool to opt into, and afterwards direct them to a landing page with another option offer. Now, you can build a interested list in your subject within a month doing this. So that is a very, very, very cool list building strategy. So hopefully I'm delivering value for everyone that's online. How to get people engaged, how to establish rapport very quickly, how to build a list, even if you don't have a list to start with. So you're welcome. You can tell me thank you because that was really cool anytime you like. Just type it in. Wow, that was amazing. Good. Huh. Okay. Now, number 7 is a really simple little item, but it's one that's asked quite a lot, and it's around the most effective days and times to run webinars. So I can go through this one really quickly. If it's a business audience, so it's a business to business, you have a product that's going to be consumed by a business of some description, I would recommend you run them, if you're here in Australia, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday at 10 a.m. In New Zealand, you could afford to run it at exactly the same time. Perhaps you'd run it at midday. Now, the reason for that is that you can, without difficulty, if you had an interest, is you can certainly capture everyone in your own country and the country probably next door in 1 or 2 time zones, but it also works really well for North America as well and South America. So, you know, it's like this webinar started at 8 p.m. New York time, 5 p.m. LA time. I think I've got that right. So it's a convenient time for them, but because it's a business audience, my experience is this, that business audiences do not like showing up at night. They've done their work, this is work, they've knocked off work, and so you'll drop your attendance rate quite significantly. Even though your registration levels might be similar, the attendance rate will drop very significantly. Now, if it's a consumer audience, Tuesday evening, but Monday evening would be my favorite day. The reason is this, that a lot of clubs and associations, etc., have their programs running in the evenings, Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays evenings, but not so many run them on a Monday evening. So that's what I'd recommend. Business audience, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, 10 a.m. if you're in this part of the world. Consumer audience, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. So I've put my preferred days in sequence, okay? Duration, 45 to 75 minutes. And what I recommend that you do is you advertise the duration as being 15 minutes longer than planned, so people have that blocked aside in their diaries or their calendars, and then they are not looking at their watches going, and you're just about getting ready to do your great offer, and they're disappearing because they only had maybe an hour planned and you're at the 65-minute mark. Okay. Now, simple blueprint. So let's show you the maths on this thing. Stimulating hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in cash flow from webinars in less than 2 days a month sitting next to the beach. Here's how it works. I typically run 2 webinars per month. Not every month, but typically there's 2 webinars per month. I do one webinar to my list, and I do another webinar to someone else's list using my OPN system. I have my virtual assistant, the wonderful Olivia, who is online. Hello, Olivia. She sets up the webinar. She sends out the invitations, if it's other people's network, to the host so they can send them out. They're all pre-written. I have, in this instance, another assistant who creates the Facebook campaign, and then all that's really left for me to do is, mostly, this is a new webinar I'm just presenting to you now because I had to write this one, but mostly I can repurpose this webinar and the other webinars time after time after time. Probably twice a year I can present the same webinar to my list without anyone getting bored. And if it's to another person's list, then I can present the same webinar one after the other to people's lists for 10, 20 times. So there's not a lot of repetitive rebuilding of the product, so to speak. So the average is just over 11,000 per webinar, and that doesn't include that includes post-webinar sales as well as on-webinar sales. I don't always sell on a webinar. Sometimes it's after the webinar. Sometimes I'll do both, different situations, and I can give you a little bit of a heads up on that during the Q&A if you have an interest as to when you should be selling on a webinar and when you should not be selling on a webinar, but selling after the webinar and how to do that. Okay, so this doesn't include, and if you are offering some sort of professional service, whether an accountant or lawyer or you're a trainer, coach, consultant, etc., then what will also happen in addition to the revenue you generate as a result of running the webinar is you'll get other requests coming through from time to time for consulting work if you have an interest in that, for doing a keynote address at a workshop, in a hotel somewhere, speaking jobs in other words. So that's over and above this. Okay. Now, how do you get all this happening? How do you get over the technological hurdle, the barrier of inertia, the fear of running your first one, and oh my gosh, will it work, won't it work, will I be any good, will I get some money out of it? How do you get through all of that? Okay, I've given you a bit of a heads up on this before, but let's just again, for the sake of demonstrating, walking the talk, let's just talk about what it's like. What's it like? It's like if you want to lose weight. It's like if you want to learn German, which I am doing very slowly because my wife is German. I think it's cool thing to do in respect to the relationship. Or you want to get fit. There is a formula which you can adopt which will very rapidly, in almost every situation, every case, every person, rapidly accelerate the achievement of your goal. Because we've all done it. We've all, I can't, on the bookshelf behind me, I've thrown most of them out now, but there used to be books on learning German and grammar books on German grammar, and there used to be DVD sets and CD sets and teach yourself German books and so on, and they all did a fantastic job of collecting dust because I've actually never used them. But when I locked into the formula that I'm about to show you, and I hired a German teacher, at 6 o'clock this morning my lesson started, as it does 6 mornings a week, and I pay the guy some money, and we do an hour of German, as I said, every morning 6 a.m. for 6 days a week. Guess what? I'm learning German. So the formula is simple. Let me pop this up on the screen. It's time, date, place, person, and money. And the person needs to be someone who knows what they're talking about. Then you need to have an instructor that has achieved what you want to achieve. In this case, the guy speaks fluent German because he's from Germany. So English is not too shabby either. So there's a time I turn up. There's a place to turn up. In this case, it's an online classroom, and I paid some money. Guess what? I'm learning German, and I wasn't doing it before when I tried to do it on my own. So this is a happy coincidence, one of these happy marketing coincidences, because this is true, and I want you to believe it because I'm about to make you an offer, and if you believe it, you're more likely to buy the offer. So again, being totally transparent with you here about what I'm doing on the webinar at 2 different levels for you. One, as a student, because you're studying this, and hopefully you can teach it and use it to benefit in your business. The other level is as a prospect. So some of you will be a prospect for the program that I'm going to run out. Stick around and tell you about it. So, as I said, it's a happy marketing coincidence where I can tell the truth, and it's also what I need you to believe. So, that's why I sleep well at night. So what the program is about, and we'll come to the Q&A, please do type your questions in. So, this program starts September the 3rd. It's 12 weeks, week on week. It is step by step. It is I hold your hand every single step of the way. I am going to offer only for 12 people, but I am going to offer for the first 12 people who register one-on-one review and coaching of your webinar when you've built it. So we'll be building your webinar as we go through the 12 weeks. By the end of the 12 weeks, you should have your webinar 80% done. We will then sit down over the internet live in real time, and I'll review your webinar and I'll coach you. And I'm going to actually offer 2 of these sessions because when I've coached you the first time, you will have to go back and change a bunch of things. And so I want to give you a second one-on-one review and coaching opportunity. So it's not just me to a whole bunch of people and you're left to, sink or swim on your own, and you're probably clearing emails, not getting stuff done. At the end of every week, every webinar, you'll have a series of actions. I'll have demonstrated how you complete those actions, and you'll be asked to do those actions and come rock up the next week. And so step by step, over 12 steps, 12 weeks, you'll build your own revenue generating webinar. Now, for today only, I'm also offering almost $7,000 in bonuses, including my super secret OPN system for getting into the networks and databases of international luminaries. And I have what Greg Kassar, Australia's #1 internet marketing, when he saw it, he described it as a super wicked smart strategy. Now, I've never offered this before in any part of a program or a course. I've only offered it one-on-one to various individuals internationally, but I'm going to offer it to you. This is really, 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 really cool. Okay, that was a bit much. Maybe there's a little bit of hype in that, but seriously, this is cool. And I'll also show you how much money I've made out of it so far this year. Okay. Finally, I will offer a 10 times return on investment money back guarantee. If you finish the course and you don't believe that you can earn at least 10 times the investment, I will show you the investment in a moment, but if you don't believe you can earn at least 10 times that investment, then let me know, I'll give you money back. No questions asked, no sort of weasel out of it, you just tell me and you can have your money back. Okay. So let's go to questions, and what have we got? We're just about coming up the hour mark, so we're absolutely on time. We're due to finish at 1/4 the hour. For those of you in India, this will be not 1/4 the hour, it'll be 1/4 the hour. Or South Australia might be as well, actually. Anyway, we're due to finish in about 20 minutes. Okay, so Rod is asking about price points. We've got price points, we've got a question about conversion rates. And investment, I'll get to the investment, Peter. Now, Peter, I did not ask Peter to ask that, but okay, well, I'll tell you what we might do. There's not many questions in there, but let's have a look at price points. Rod, because the question is not specific enough, and I don't mean that as in a rude way at all, I hope you don't take any offense by that, but you give me an example of what sort of products or services you would be offering, because the price points will vary a lot. Actually, Rod, I'll show you this might be a part of the answer to your question, I think. Let me just show you this next slide. I put this one up here because I was sure someone would answer the question. When do you actually make an offer for people to pull out their credit card on a webinar, and when don't you? However you do it, you give 100% massive value with zero selling during the content part of the webinar, which is what we've just finished. And then after the Q&A, you offer something for sale. Now, depends what product or service you have. If you have a low price product, for example, I've sometimes promoted my Killer Referrals program, which is designed to generate 10 successful referrals every single month. We offer that for $97, and we have a special bonus we throw in as well. If you buy it online, I think it's $5.95 or $7.95, so we offer the digital version very, very inexpensively. And because there's no one-on-one relationship required, that will work really well online. So you give people the offer, you tell them it closes at midnight or when it's going to close, and you give them the link, and they go away and they order it from the shopping cart. Also, if you have a shorter term one-to-many training program, so shorter term, I mean less than 3 months, and you've done a good enough job of building rapport and impressing people and doing a guarantee and the bonus and everything else, just like I'm doing right now, and you can also offer that for sale at the end of a webinar, so you can literally generate sales during the webinar. However, you should change the strategy when you have a service offering requiring an ongoing one-on-one relationship, such as coaching or consulting. It's quite difficult to sell that sort of service on the webinar. So what you do for those is also very high-priced services such as architecture or home renovations, high-priced products such as boats, cars, planes, etc., etc. What you do is you offer a free follow-up consult. So it could be a strategy consult session, such as Ari Galper does very effectively. It could be a discovery call, which is the style I prefer, where you actually do a diagnostic over the person's needs, their business, etc., find out more about them, and then you can figure out if your expertise is a fit to their needs, and you can make a recommendation where relevant, and if not, you can hopefully refer them to someone else. So now, Rod, that might be part of an answer to your question. Irina, so you're speaking at a conference on September the 3rd. Yes, still possible to be part of the program. That won't be a problem because everything is recorded and you will get a replay. So if you inevitably someone is going to be flying on a date or a time of the program. So we've got that covered. You'll get the replay the same day, so you can even listen to it at lunchtime at the conference. Okay. Mike's asking, okay, you've sold your credibility, now where's the deal? Okay, I'm going to show you that, but I wanted to ask questions. Evan, this is a good question. Do you need a product or service before this training and then create a product or service afterwards? It's a really, really good question. The simple answer is no, you don't, but you would also not reasonably expect to have built the webinar by the end of the 12 weeks. It would take you longer if you're starting from, I don't have a product or service. The big advantage of not having a product or service is you're not blindsided by being in love with what you've developed. You have the opportunity to start with a clean whiteboard in respect to marketplace's needs, and you can really develop a product or service that fits a need rather than saying, okay, how do I sell more of what I got? It's a very different perspective. So, simple answer is no, you don't. Advantages, disadvantages in having two presenters, an MC or introducer and a specialist expert. Well, the big advantage of having the MC is that it positions you, Owen, as the expert. So you see this on television all the time. Larry King interviews whoever, and so the prestige and I guess the rapport of the interviewee goes up immeasurably because they're seen to be important enough to be interviewed. So getting interviewed is a terrific tactic, and it really doesn't matter if you get your mother to do it, so long as people don't know that she's your mother. So, but it's just someone interviewing you. The person interviewing you does not have to be famous. They just it's like having someone introduce you. Peter, why do you run a separate webinar for your OPNs? Why not have them all attend the same webinar? Good question, and a simple answer is that I'll often run a webinar on my list at exactly the same time. It'll be on a different subject. So I like to keep them separate. I also like to find it much easier to track where leads came from when I run them as separate webinars. Great question, Peter. Very astute question. Martin, does the program include how to create the slides the webinar will require? Yes, indeed it does. Yes, indeed it does. Let's go on to it. Let's get it. Let's just go back. Whoa, Tom. Too much coffee, way too much coffee. Okay. So let's have a look at the program, how it works. Starts on September the 3rd, 10 a.m. I think, Australian Eastern Standard Time, adjust for daylight saving. Everything's recorded. If you don't want to get up at 1 o'clock every morning, don't sweat it. You'll be able to get the replay. There's three big benefits with this. The first one is, provided you do have a product or service to start with, and as I said to Evan, it'll take you a little longer if you don't, but you will end up, either way, you'll end up with an actual revenue generating webinar. Now, every other course I've ever done on webinars, some really good ones, but you don't end up with that. You end up with some bunch of great ideas, but you haven't actually built the machine. With this one, because I'm offering for the first 12 people one-on-one coaching, you will have a fully developed, fully critiqued, fully tested and ready to go to generate revenue. Benefit number 2 is you'll not only have the webinar built, but equally importantly, you'll have a webinar marketing system in place so you can replicate other people's network success time and again. I would find it difficult to hype the benefit of this because it is a very, very rich benefit. Now, I have a super duper special offer. There's the third benefit, which I'll explain to you in a moment. 12 places available. And the reason there's only 12 places available for this particular offer is that I can't afford the time. I don't want to afford the time to do too many one-on-one critiques. So the first 12 people get 2 75-minute one-on-one critiques to make sure you've got a fully tested, fully developed webinar ready to go. So look, there's too much stuff that I cover in this to put them all on the screen. I'm just sticking a whole bunch of things we do cover on the screen. List building is a critical part of this process. OPN, how to legally and ethically Xerox other people's lists, compelling titles, engaging agendas, using social media marketing, Facebook advertisements, how to boost attendance rate, engagement content. So I think, Martin, in answer to your question, I show you how to build the slides, I show you how to build the content, I give you the sequence, the step-by-step process. Some of the boring stuff, but really important stuff like the logistics, what webinar platform do I use, what are my options for shopping carts, what about payment, do I have to have an online shopping cart, do I have to have eWay or something expensive like that, or can I just use PayPal? We cover all that stuff. Positioning, figuring out what your island is. You know, most of my clients start with a really, really good product or service. They just haven't positioned it and described it in a way so that it appears to be proprietary. The moment it's proprietary, you will increase appeal. So we figure that out for you as well. We do pricing strategies. Rod, you know, you'd be interested to know that we deal with pricing strategies to gain maximum profits and still give exceptionally good value. How to write the email invitations. I've got 2 step-by-step formulas for that, not just 1, 2 proven step-by-step formulas. So you get the template and you can fill in the gaps, like paint by numbers. Offers, different types of offers, figuring out which one's right for you, maximizing post-webinar sales. If you are doing webinars currently and you're not republishing the webinar, then you're missing out. You could be increasing your revenue by 50% and your profit by something like 80%. How to repurpose webinars so you can create an online store and generate extra revenue year after year. And creating your own 2015 webinar marketing calendar, which is very, very powerful. So at the start of this year, I had 9 months out of the 12 months booked with other people's networks, webinars, my own networks. It's all in the cloud. Olivia is fantastic at making it all happen. So let's get back to this opportunity. This is how it works. In September, we have the live training, week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4, it's show and tell time. Show me what you've done, show me what you've built, and I critique it. And you get to listen to me critiquing to others. Webinar number 4 each month will be a longer one, probably 2 hours or so, as we pull the bits to pull everything to bits and put it back together again. And we go into October and we do exactly the same thing again. The 3 live training webinars. The 4th week we have the coaching webinar, a longer one, and then we do the same. And by the end of November, your webinar is ready to go. Hopefully, certainly before the end of the year. Now, normally I would charge for 12 webinars, I'd charge $500 each, and I think most people would agree that it's probably reasonable if it's full, rich, valuable content that you can get a fantastic return on investment. However, if you use I'll give you the link to order in a moment, if you use the code WOW, which is webinar on webinars, WOW, then you will reduce that to 3 times $995. So we've gone from $6,000 down to $3,750. Use the code WOW, which people will only know about if they're on this webinar or listening to the replay, 2985. So you can save quite a chunk of money on this, over 50%. 12 places are available. Now there are more than 12 places available in general, but only for this offer with the one-on-one critiquing. So let's have a look at what you get. You get the webinars, of course, and the training, and you get the coupon code that saves you $900. The 2 critiques I've valued. My time I charge at $1,000 an hour, and I regularly get that if I'm doing one-offs. So you get 2 of those at 75 minutes, each valued at $1,250, legitimately, realistically valued. I'm also throwing in the Killer Copywriting course, which Evan was kindly raving about earlier. which is a 2-day course. It's quite intensive. The digital version, the online physical version, sells for $1,595 in the online store. Now, this is the big benefit that I wanted to tell you about. I want to give you something, an ethical bribe, if you like, that is of exceptional value. It's called the Webinar Marketing Cooperative. I have not marketed this or offered it before to my clients, certainly not in this format. Now, I valued this at $2,000. That is ridiculously undervalued. I'll tell you how this thing works in a minute, but essentially it gives you access to doing reciprocal webinars with others who have complementary products or service. So it really takes OP and other people's networks, and it's kind of already done for you, because a whole lot of the people that you could use to generate revenue and photocopy their lists and vice versa are sitting there waiting for you. So total bonus is almost $7,000. If you, the critiques must be redeemed prior to March 31st. I don't want someone coming in 2018 and saying, hey, can you do the critique? I have a little bit of latitude with that, of course. I'm not going to cut you off if you come on April the 3rd. And the cooperative, the Webinar Marketing Cooperative, I'll tell you more about that in a moment. To order, by the way, okay, you can just put your credit card details, your number into the questions box, expiry date, name, and credit card number. If you're not secure, if you don't feel that's secure enough, I think it's quite secure, but if you don't feel it is, that's fine. I'll give you other options in a moment. Okay, now back to the cooperative. The Webinar Marketing Cooperative, which is a network of people who present webinars and who are open to you presenting to their network and vice versa, that will be open to you. I cannot give you a guarantee in respect to the results you get. It'll be dependent on the other members plus the quality of your webinar presentation, which should be pretty jolly good by the time we finish the 12 weeks. There is a money-back guarantee, and as I said before, you complete the 12 weeks. If in the 13th week you don't feel you'll be able to generate at least 10 times your investment, email me. I'll arrange a 100% full refund, no questions asked. You have to make the request in the 13th week. It's no good coming back a year later, but I think that's a pretty reasonable requirement. Okay, so there is the URL at the bottom of the screen. You can go there and find out more details about what happens in every single week. The order button is there, but this Webinar Marketing Cooperative, there is a website set up. You can go and check it out. This is the first year it's been in operation. So far this year I've generated, I did the sums yesterday, $62,500 for my business just from this one source. So far this year, $62,500. So it's very powerful, and I cannot guarantee you'll do the same, but that is the actual factual of what it's brought into my business this year. And you get that if you order in the next 20 minutes. Now remember, just a reminder, you can cancel within 7 days if you think I put too much pressure on you, etc. But this is a fast action bonus. It's exceptionally valuable. We will upload a video of your webinar to the Webinar Marketing Cooperative. Other people will be able to see it. You'll be able to approach other people in the network, and you'll be able to reciprocate presentations with complimentary hosts. So I do this pretty much every single month, and that's what drives quite a lot of the revenue. 4 ways to order, and I'll come back to questions. So use the coupon code WOW, and it gets reduced to $995 per month over the 3-month period. So you have one payment now, and then you have another payment in 30 days time, and a third payment in 30 days after that. You can fax orders through. Anyone who orders will get the slides of this presentation, and that will be like our agreement for your records. You'll have the slides, okay? The general database will get the video replay, but only people that order will actually get the slides. You'll get both if you order. You can type the card details into the questions window. You can send a payment via PayPal, only for the lump sum. We don't do cash flow payments on PayPal. Or you can go to the website www.8020center.com/wow and use the coupon code WOW. All right, and that, I think, is pretty much the presentation. What have we got? Oh yeah, I need to start my little timer here. This is the official 20-minute timer, and I'm just going to slide on the screen. Okay, Let's have a look. Oops, so hopefully you can see that. You wait for it. Okay, there we go. It's counting down. Okay, so Peter, I think we've asked you a question about the investment. Irina, yes, definitely. If you're traveling, everything is recorded, so you won't miss out. Evan, we've answered your question about not needing a product or service. Owen, yours on Angela, thank you, glad you enjoyed it. Mark, ditto. Rebecca, do you run this course throughout the year? I'm guessing I am asking, will you run another one after December 3rd? Probably not. I'll probably offer it again at a similar time next year, perhaps middle of next year, Rebecca, but yeah, timing's not right from you at the moment. I totally respect that, but the answer to the question is that I'm uncertain, but I may choose to run it again in the middle of next year. Kerry is away 9th to 24th. I wouldn't let that stop me, Kerry. That's only the first, 3 weeks or less than 2 weeks of the program, basically. So you get the first one, and you can replay them overseas. If you're on holiday, I wouldn't want to do that, but certainly it wouldn't be a knockout factor. Irina, I will look forward to working with you. I am really looking forward to doing this, actually. It's just a subject I have a great deal of passion about. You are one of the 12. Yep. Yeah, Richard, we'll get you a replay link via email for the webinar. And Owen, you're very welcome. Yeah, Irina, you can. Which country are you in? Because we can get you electronic funds transfer is fine. Paul, glad you enjoyed it. I think that's about it, folks, probably. Peter, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Terrific. Mike, here is a lesson you can give your audience to take notes / copy your slides. Easy just to click print screen on each slide. Yeah, that's right, and place them into a Word document. Then you have a full set of the notes. You can do that. Definitely do that. Okay. Thank you, Mike, for that tip. Yeah, another one wanting electronic funds transfer. Yes, we can do that. I'll get you the bank account details. I'll email you bank account details